I think the actual question that's baked into the should you buy a Steam Deck in late 2025 is, when is the Steam Deck 2 going to come out? So let's talk about that. First thing that needs to be said is this is all speculation. If anybody says, I know exactly when the Steam Deck 2 is going to come out, unless they have evidence that they can prove, they don't, and don't listen to them. I have absolutely scoured the internet for details on the Steam Deck 2, and while there is some information out there, nobody other than Valve knows for sure. So keep that in mind, take everything with a grain of salt. That being said, Gaben himself said there isn't going to be a Steam Deck 2 until there has been a significant leap in handheld technology. Now, what does significant mean? Who knows? It could be anything. It means different things to different people. But what the general consensus of the internet seems to be is that the earliest it could come out is 2026. And in more likelihood, it's more like 2027 to 2028. So anywhere from 1 to 3+ years. And I know that's a huge time window, and I know that's frustrating because you're trying to make a buying decision. And I would rather just tell you how it is than make something up and be wrong and then basically have lied to you. So this is just what it is. We don't know when the Steam Deck 2 is going to come out. All right, and while I was editing this video, we got some leaks for the Steam Frame. It looks like it's probably a VR headset, but it also could be a home console. Either way, it's very unlikely to be a Steam Deck 2. I'm planning on making a whole video on the Steam Frame, so stay tuned for that. But if you were going to buy a Steam Deck right now, I would just hold off at least until we get this announcement. It looks like it'll be happening in September and sooner rather than later. And although it probably isn't a Deck 2, I personally would still just wait just to be safe because we don't know what it's going to be. All right, back to it. But I want to tell you why that might not matter as much as you think it does. And that's because I actually think the Steam Deck in its current state is still more than enough for most people. So one big question that you need to ask yourself is, what types of games are you trying to play on your Steam Deck? If they are all AAA modern games that have come out in the last 3 years, then yeah, there's a good chance that you should wait for the Steam Deck 2 or go for something like the ROG Ally X or Lenovo Legion Go, something that has more power and ability to play AAA games, because those things exist. But if you're someone who doesn't only, or at least not primarily, play AAA modern games, then I actually think the Steam Deck is going to be great for you, and it could be worth it to pick one up now rather than waiting for the Steam Deck 2 to come out, because maybe that's 3 years of gaming, 3 years of your life that you could enjoy and have a better time with, versus sitting there and waiting and constantly watching YouTube videos and seeing if you're making the best buyer's decision and all that. I think that's something in tech YouTube, or maybe just in the world, that we get caught up in, and I am definitely guilty of this, where we are constantly waiting for the next best thing to come out. And so we're constantly looking towards the future instead of enjoying how our life is right now. And the thing with the tech space is that there will always be a better thing just beyond the horizon. There will always be something better in the future. There will always be a Steam Deck 2 and an ROG Ally X 2, and it will always have better performance and better battery life. And these things will always exist. And so there has to be some amount of, and I guess we're probably getting more into philosophy, but that the current moment, your life right now, has inherent value. And while delaying gratification is sometimes the answer, it's not always the answer. And there needs to be a balance between waiting for an uncertain and impermanent future and doing something about your current life right now. That's getting a little more philosophical than I was intending for a Steam Deck buyer's guide, but whatever, it's just the truth. I can say for myself personally, the Steam Deck has brought genuine and noticeable improvements to my life as far as just overall enjoyment and satisfaction. And for me, that has been well worth the money. Now, that's not to say that's the case for everybody. I'm just speaking for myself. I think we gamers can also get so caught up in the numbers, like having a better frame rate or running it on ultra graphics versus medium, or those sorts of things, that we forget that that's not the point of the game. The point of the game isn't to run it at the highest frame rate or to have the best graphics. The point of the game is to enjoy the game. That's it. And now, where I used to be kind of more PCMR, and I'd be like, I want the best settings, I want the best graphics, and I have a desktop PC, and I still have that side of me. What the Steam Deck has helped me understand is that Now I think of it as more, there is a minimum bar that needs to be cleared for a game to be enjoyable. And after that minimal bar is cleared, then getting better graphics and better frame rates, they might improve your experience a tiny bit, but it's not going to be that significant at all. And so now I think of it more, can the Steam Deck run the game at low or medium settings at 30 to 40 FPS on the low end? And if it can, that's good enough. I can have a good experience on that game. And one crystal clear example of that for me was I beat Elden Ring on the Steam Deck, getting about 30 to maybe 45 FPS the whole time. And that's on all low. And I think a lot of people would say, yeah, you can't play Elden Ring at, you can't play it at those frame rates and at that graphics setting. And to those people, they might not enjoy that gaming experience. If they're playing Elden Ring, they might not have a good time with that. I realized it was a fun time for me. I thought that the graphics would look too shitty and that the frame rate would be too low, but it turns out you get used to it pretty quick. And then you're just playing Elden Ring and you're not thinking like, oh, the graphics don't look that good. You're just thinking, I'm going to kill that fell beast. Like, that's what you're thinking. Yeah, so I think we often, as gamers, get too caught up in the next best thing or having the utmost performance or having the best of this, whatever this is. And we forget it's just about enjoying the experience. So now I try to think of the Steam Deck more as how many games can I not play? And what I've taken away from that is that almost all the games that I want to play on the Steam Deck, I can play on the Steam Deck, which is just awesome. Like, yeah, of course I would like higher frame rates, and of course I would like it to look better, but it's not as big of a deal as I originally thought it was. Now, there is one huge exception for that for me, which is one game that I would love to play more on the Steam Deck, and it just doesn't work that well, and that's Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 has been my favorite game in the last, 2 years. I forget how long ago it came out, but it's been one of my favorite games, and I play it all the time, and I do play it on my Steam Deck, and I do play it at a level 10 Super Helldive, and honestly, it kind of sucks. You can get by, you can play it, but it's not a very good experience, and I definitely wouldn't recommend other people to play like that. It's just, I don't know, I'm weird and I like the Steam Deck. Oh, shit. So that would be one example of I definitely want more performance, and that would improve my experience dramatically. Because as is, I just try not to play Helldivers 2 on the Steam Deck too much because it's just not that enjoyable of experience. And on that, Helldivers 2 is a modern game, and one thing that the Steam Deck showed me and made crystal clear is that yeah, modern games are great and there's nothing wrong with them. And games that were made 5 years ago that were a modern game, or 10 years ago that was a big AAA headliner, those games are still fantastic. And I would even argue in a lot of cases, they're better than the games that are coming out today. And they're really cheap because if a game is 10 years old, you can get it on a crazy sale on Steam. And their performance is going to be awesome on a Steam Deck. Most of those games you can run at not ultra high settings, but quite high settings and very good frame rates. So I think that's one of the areas that I know people know about this, but that's one of the areas I didn't think about before I got my Steam Deck was playing older AAA games that have fantastic stories and that have just as much effort put into them and sometimes more than modern games, and they run great on your Steam Deck. And my favorite example of this, which is another one of my favorite games to play, is Red Dead Redemption 2. That game I run on medium to high settings and I get about 40 FPS, and that's how I play it on my Steam Deck, and it looks gorgeous. I actually think Red Dead 2 is one of the prettiest games that I've ever played, and that game is 8 years old. And the reason it's so pretty is not because it has the best ray tracing or the best shadows or the best texture maps or whatever it is. It's because they put in a ton of attention to detail and they went for an art style, and the art style is like kind of watercolor paintbrushy, and it looks so gorgeous. And that's just kind of another example where it's like we get so caught up on the newest graphics and ray tracing and whatever it is. And I still think Red Dead 2 is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen, even today in 2025, and it's 8 years old at this point. Hopefully that helped answer your question. If you're still not sure, drop me a comment and I'll try to get back to you. And if you want more details on how Helldivers 2 runs on the Steam Deck, check out this video. It's playable, but only in the most technical sense. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.